Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Strive for Good Life podcast. My name is Nino Pinguer, and I'm here with Lesley Zwick, a holistic performance coach. I'm super excited to have her on the show, so welcome, Lesley.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here as well.
Yeah, so I guess we can just jump right into your background, a little bit about, how you got started in entrepreneurship, what those early influences were in your life. So we can just start there if you want.
Awesome. Yeah. So I grew up in a world around entrepreneurs. My father was always an entrepreneur. And so I watched him build businesses, do all kinds of stuff. And it's sort of in my blood. It's definitely in my blood. And so when I graduated from college, I actually have a degree in education, but I knew with my degree in education that really my heart was in building businesses and helping people differently. So I used my degree, but just not in a classroom. I love to educate and teach people in different ways. And I've had a variety of businesses over the years. I started out having a chocolate business actually about 20 years ago. And it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely a luxury item. And when the economy crashed in the, early 2009, 2000, that time frame, my business also went with it, because it was a luxury item. And from there, though, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. So at that time when my business sort of crashed, I had a 2-year-old and a 6-week-old. And my 2-year-old actually was diagnosed with a very rare blood disorder. And so priority stepped in of mom was priority, being a mom was priority. And so I stepped out of the business world a bit to be a stay-at-home mom. And our son was born 18 months later. So 3 kids very close together. But that love of being an entrepreneur was always there. And so I was dabbling in some home-based businesses. I was doing a variety of things while raising my kids. And about 7.5 years ago, that was when I really jumped back in full-time and said, okay, I really want to do this. I really want to build a business. And it didn't start that way. It started with my own personal journey. Everything that I've done in my life has really been my own personal journey. And at the time, I was very unhealthy, physically, emotionally, financially. I was a mess. And part of it was there was a lot of guilt that I was holding for some of the debt that we had from my chocolate business. When I literally walked away from it, my daughter got sick. I called my business partner and said, my daughter's in the hospital. We don't know what's wrong and I'm done, right? Like I just never went back. And so it was one of those things that I took on a lot of debt because of it. And I felt very guilty about it, which was part of the issue. And I decided 7.5 years ago, well, I need to change my life. I can't continue to live the way that I'm living. And so I first started with my physical health. I was 75 pounds overweight. I've always considered myself a professional yo-yo dieter. And I was at this time on my way back up. And so I said, okay, first thing I need to do is I need to get myself physically healthy. I can't take care of my children. I can't build a business. I can't do anything if I'm not physically healthy. And so I started with that process of getting physically healthy. And I knew I've done the weight loss thing many, many times. And I knew that if I was going to do it this time, I had to do it differently. It couldn't just be about the quote unquote diet. I had to change my mindset. I had to change my beliefs about myself, how I looked at myself, how I looked at the world, because if I didn't, I knew I'd lose the weight and I would do the same thing again. I'd put it all back on because I wasn't dealing with the underlying causes. That was where I started first. And very quickly within that, I lost 75 pounds in the course of 7 months. But in that piece, people started coming to me and saying, what are you doing? Because they'd seen me lose the weight before. Many people had seen me lose it multiple times. But my whole life was starting to change because I started focusing on the mindset pieces and on reconnecting to who I am inside, not the external forces, not this is why you need to lose weight for the motivation things, the clothing fits better and the energy is better. Those are all great. And those are all motivators, but the inspiration had to come from inside. And I had to really connect into that piece. And as I started doing that, people said, what are you doing? They saw this whole change in everything about me. And so I just sort of naturally fell into coaching. I started coaching people on weight loss and wellness because that's what I knew how to do. I was doing it and I knew what I was doing. And so I could just teach them, here's what I'm doing. Here's the steps. And so I started as a weight loss and wellness coach and built a business pretty quickly and fell in love with doing it. This took my love of entrepreneurship and my love of teaching. Like I said, I use my background in education. I finally found a way to really use that background in education. And I used those two pieces together and built this beautiful weight loss and wellness business. And through the course, I had people starting to come to me and said, hey, Lesley, we don't need the weight loss, but we really want the mindset components of what you're doing. We want those things. So will you coach us that way? Well, I wasn't really sure how to do that. I knew how to do it wrapped around weight loss. So I started, first I, sort of pushed people when I was like, no, this is my niche. I do weight loss. Like I can get you with some other really good mindset people, but they kept coming to me and kept saying, this is what we want. This is what we want. I started to build it. I said, okay, if this is what they want, I'm doing it anyway with my weight loss clients. The concepts are all exactly the same. And so I started to build a mindset coaching piece to it. And through that as well, I'm very much into energy work. I've always been into energy work, and I started incorporating those pieces into my life, the energy work and shifting that energy. I was always doing it, but I didn't realize what I was doing, but I started actively doing it. And again, my results went even better, and people started saying, well, what are you doing now? How can you add this in? And so my business over the last 7.5 years has really evolved from what started as strictly weight loss and wellness to now I call myself a holistic performance coach. So I definitely do weight loss and wellness for people, but really my mission is to help people move from point A to point Z as quickly as possible, clearing out the energetic stuff, clearing out the limiting beliefs and the mindset pieces so that they can actually create their dreams and reach the goals that they've set instead of sitting here spinning in circles.
I love that. There's so much to unpack with all of that. And so I want to get back to what you're doing now in a little bit, but let's go back to the first business, the chocolate. And actually, maybe we should go back a little further. I'm kind of curious, you said your dad was an entrepreneur, so maybe talk about what he did and how that influenced the way that you saw the world.
So my father was a man of dreams before his time. So actually, those of you who eat in a fast food restaurant and eat at a salad bar, my father was the first person to have a salad bar in a fast. My father owned restaurant or started restaurant chains. Several of them. Before that, he had a grocery store back in the mid 70s, early 70s, before my time. But that did delivery. It was called Call-A-Mart, and you called in your order and your food was delivered to your house, like man before his time. But this is the house that I grew up in, like that he was always thinking of the next idea and how can I be ahead of my time and what can I create to make the world a better place or a little bit easier or a little bit healthier or a little bit, and so this was what I grew up with. And he actually, when I was 7, had a dissecting aortic aneurysm. Thank God he survived that. He passed away about a year ago from brain cancer, but he survived that. But that slowed down he had to step back from working. But the entrepreneur piece of him never stopped. So it was always the coming up with the new ideas and helping other people, create these businesses. And it was just, that was the world that I grew up in. And as I started to get into that, he was my number one supporter. And let's go. You can build this. You can do this. You can, and then later on, we can do this together, because he was very much into helping people get healthy and helping people change their lives. That his whole life, really became about that. And so we very much did that together the last 5-6 years of his life. And it's just been it just played into who I am, and who I continue to be.
That's amazing. I have small children, a daughter that's 4 years old. And so it makes me think about how I can maybe start helping her develop those ideas and that mindset. So that's just cool to see examples of that. So how did you get into chocolate? I mean, why that specifically? And, what was your unique take on it that was helping you grow the business?
So it was a turnkey business, but actually my father was involved with the parent company, which is what started me in it, because I was looking for a business. I wanted to build a business, and he was involved with the parent company. And so it was a company called the Chocolate Printing Company that I think is still around, but they're not what they were at the time. And it was this gigantic printer that printed on chocolates. And you did we used Photoshop, and we designed the artwork, and we printed on the chocolates. And it was so fun. It was, similar to how people print images on cakes, but it was a much more advanced technology. And it was just a lot of fun. And I went in, instead of just most people who were doing this were just selling to this person or that person one-offs. But I, with the entrepreneur mind that I have, was like, well, this is just small. I don't want to think small. And so I went out and created a business where we were bringing people on as affiliates underneath us. So I brought on a business partner, and we were bringing on affiliates underneath us, and we had about 100 affiliates underneath us when I walked away from the business. It was photographers, it was party planners, it was people who sold, business trinkets, everything, you name it, like it fit everywhere. And so we went to all kinds of trade shows and that to market it, which is where the debt came in. We were investing in it, but it was actually doing really well until the economy crashed. And when the economy crashed, all these people that were selling these custom products, their clients weren't buying the custom products anymore. And so, it was a trickle down. And we had accrued this debt that we would have, had the economy not crashed, we would have paid off and we would have been very successful. But it was that. And then it was a variety of things in the world happened. The parent company is in New York, and it was hit and affected by Hurricane Sandy. And so everything shifted. Their plant was damaged. And so it was a great learning experience for me. And in so many ways of how to build this, how to create this confidence building of, I can go out and I can do this. I can, we had over 100 people who were selling this for us. Like, that was my mastermind, my business partner who came in. She was the finance person and watched the numbers. And I was the creative, like, here's what we're going to go do. Let's go do it. You figure out the finances of how we're going to do it. I'm telling you what we're going to do. Like that's my zone of genius. And it was a lot of fun. And it taught me a lot that I now apply into the business that I'm building now. How to go out, how to create it, how to find it, how to connect with people that can use my services. So it was a great learning and stepping stone. And even though it put me in a lot of debt and caused a lot of stress for quite a while, I've learned, now hindsight is 2020, all the lessons that I learned, and I couldn't be where I am today without having done it. It was a little ironic that I went from selling chocolate to weight loss and wellness, but
Right. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's really cool that you used affiliates to grow your business. Do you like that model? I mean, what can you tell us about that?
The model for that, it worked amazing because they could get to people that I could never get to. So, I had a photographer in New Mexico who was offering her products to everybody, offering our products to everybody who walked in. I would never have gotten to her clients any other way. And they were coming, especially photographers were fun to work with because they were giving us really high level images that we could work with easily. But most of these people, when we had 100 people doing this, we would never have gotten into doors that they got us into. I mean, we did chocolates for some really big events that we never ourselves would have had the contacts to get into. But our customer, our affiliates, had those connections, and they were offering it to everybody. So it was definitely a great way to build the business.
Yeah, I've seen that model work really well. So to anyone listening out there, it might be a fit for your business. You might have to try it. Okay, so let's talk about, kind of how when everything came to a halt with the economy and you going into debt, a lot of people would be hit with that, and it would maybe just destroy their motivation or their confidence to keep going and start another business. So how did you kind of deal with that? Did it slow you down at all? I mean, I know you said you felt a lot of guilt, but how did you kind of emotionally and mentally, have the resolve to keep going after that?
So it definitely slowed me down. A lot of things in my life hit hard. So, because I walked away from it, I had a 2-year-old she has a very rare blood disorder, 1 in 10 million in pediatrics. So, and I had a 6-week-old baby at the time. And then, like I said, 18 months later, our son was born. So I had 3 kids, and that became my focus. It definitely slowed me down. And this guilt and this, like, I feel a feeling of failure was really big time on my shoulders. And it slowed me down for a little while. It definitely knocked my confidence. That was part of the weight gain. That was part of all the things. And then finally, I one day looked in the mirror and said, no, I can't do this anymore. This is not how I want to live my life. I know I'm capable. I had done it. I had built businesses. I had done other things. And I just had to finally say to myself, no, I don't choose this life. And that's a big thing that I teach people. Everything that's happening, we can choose it. And I had to look at myself and say, I don't choose this. I don't choose to sit here and be miserable and feel guilty and be depressed because it's not doing any good. I want to be a mom. I wasn't the mom I wanted to be. I wasn't the wife I wanted to be. I wasn't living the life I wanted to be. And I believed I was brought into this world to do big things. We're all brought into this world to do big things. And I was sitting there letting the icky feelings control me instead of me saying, no, I can do something. If I wasn't still supposed to be here, I actually almost died when my son was born. And I said, I'm not here to sit back and be depressed and watch my kids grow up and not be active in their life. I'm not here to sit back and not help provide for my family. I'm not here to sit back and not have a role in this world. And so I had to make that conscious decision. And when I made that conscious decision, it was not easy. 7.5 years later, I still battle the stuff that goes on, in my head. But I made that conscious decision and I said, okay, what is the first place? Where can I start? When we're stuck like that, we just have to take some sort of teeny tiny itty bitty baby step. And that first baby step was saying, okay, I'm going to do this by starting with my physical health, because if you're not healthy physically, nothing else is going to be healthy. And I knew the difference of how I felt when I was healthy physically and when I wasn't. So that was the first place I said, I know what to do with that, but I was going to do it differently this time because I had done it the other way many, many, many times. So it was taking that first step. That first step for me was picking up the phone and calling the person who became my health and wellness coach and said, I need your help. I can't do this alone. And that was a huge step for me. For some people, that would be a nothing thing. But for me, it was a really big step to ask for help. I'm not one that naturally likes to ask for help. I've learned. I worked on that because I know that we can't do it alone. And, as a coach, I have multiple coaches now because all coaches need coaches. And but it was taking that first step. And when you take that first step, then it's okay, what's my next step? And sometimes these steps are so small, but even the smallest steps will get you someplace, will get you ahead, right? Somebody doesn't run a marathon by waking up and all of a sudden they decide they're going to run a marathon and they go from start to 26.2 miles, like that. It's one step at a time. It's one. Literally, sometimes for people who have never run at all, it's I'm going to run from my house down to the end of the block, or I'm going to, starting even further back from that, I'm going to walk from my house to the end of the block, right? We have to take those itty bitty steps, and you look back 6 months later or a year later or however later, and you look, okay, I started with it. I was going to walk from here to the end of the block, and now 6 months later, oh my gosh, I'm running a marathon, or a year later, or whatever it is. That's the same thing in anything in life that we want to change. It's starting to take those steps. And I actually take people through a process that I call SHIFT, SHIFT. A lot of us use the word shift, but this is exactly that process, right? The first thing, that S stands for seek change. You have to first want the change. You have to have that moment where you look at yourself and say, I can't do this way anymore. It's got to change. And those things sometimes they come from external, which is motivation. You don't feel well, your debt's too high, or whatever it is. The things, those are external motivation. It's sitting on your shoulders, those weights on your shoulders. And those are pretty powerful. And then the second level of it is the internal inspiration to know how your life can change. And a lot of times it starts with motivation. I don't care where it starts from. You want it to start, right? Motivation, inspiration, they both are powerful. And then it goes into the H. You then have to have a plan. Right? You cannot go do anything without a plan. If I were to drive from Florida to Michigan, which I drive that all the time, without figuring out which route we're going to go, I'm not going to end up in Michigan. I'm probably going to end up in Kansas. I have to have a plan of I have to have a plan of action of where I'm going to go, how I'm going to go, And then the I is initiate action. I have to start taking that baby step. If I want to make that trip from Florida to Michigan, the first thing I have to do is go fill up my car with gas, right? You have to have that first step and start going. So I like to teach people that we're standing here on this side of the Grand Canyon, looking across at our future version of ourselves. And how are we going to get across? We can't just hop in a helicopter and fly across. Nothing will have changed. We'll have our current version of ourselves standing next to our future version of ourselves. We have to build that bridge across, one plank at a time. And that's the initiating action. Put that first plank down, and it can be teeny tiny, but put that first plank down, and then the next one, and then the next one. And as you do that, you'll make it across. And I can promise you that whatever's on the other side of that Grand Canyon, when you start, is going to be very different, because as you grow that, your vision's going to change. Your dreams are going to change, because you're going to gain that self-confidence. You're going to be clearing out the stuff that was holding you back on this side of the Grand Canyon. The next piece in it is the F. And the F is the key to all of it. If you don't do this part, you're not going to have major growth. And that's facing your fears, facing the limiting beliefs, facing the self-doubt, facing all that stuff that you don't want to face. A lot of us, push and speak positive and positive affirmations, all the stuff, we pile it on top, but we're not facing really what's there. So when you tell yourself a bunch of positive affirmations and don't look at the underlying stuff, they don't do any good, because you're just piling it on top of that negative energy. Your body in some place is going, you're a liar, I don't believe it, I don't believe it, I don't believe it. You can say all the positive you want, but if you don't face that stuff and look it in the eye, where if you say, when I was trying to get healthy, I am a healthy person, or I am working to be a healthy person, and my body is saying, you've done this before, you were never successful, all the lies. And if you just smush them down, they're still there. But if you look them in the eye and say, I don't choose you anymore, I don't choose to listen to this voice anymore, face it, you can then clear it, and you can have the T, which is to transform. But if you don't face it, you're going to be stuck in the S, the H, the I. You're going to just spin there. You're going to seek change, have a plan, initiate action. And it's going to work for a little while. You're going to have some progress. If you're building a business, you're going to have some business growth, but all that underlying stuff is going to pull in, and it's going to crash again. And you're going to, or may not totally crash, but it's going to go back again. And you're going to be in that same thing. You're going to be stuck in the SHIT, stuck, hurt, insecure, trapped. And so to get out of that, you have to face those things that are inside of you. And that's what I do as a holistic performance coach, is I help people on, figure out how to face that intellectually, but also on an energy level, because everything's energy. So those limiting beliefs, those thoughts, those pieces, that's all an energy. And you can choose to hold that energy, or you can choose to let it go. And when you choose to let it go, that's when you have the real growth. That's when you start to really actually make it across the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. I found that true to be found that true in my life, where it's exactly those fears that if I'm trying to work around them, avoid them, it's exactly what you outlined. I just fall into a trap and repeat kind of the same bad behaviors. It's that self-sabotage that creeps in. So what are some practical tips in terms of actually starting to face fears for listeners out there?
So one of the things that I love to teach people to do is to take, if you're an affirmation person, or taking a word or taking something that you want. So, let's say an affirmation, and write out that affirmation, and write out first all the ideal things that are going to be. So if it's, my business is successful, right? If that's your affirmation. So write out all the ideal things. What is it going to look like when your business is successful? It's going to come easy. Clients are going to come to me, and want what I have. I'm not going to have to struggle for money, whatever, all the ideal things, and just make that list. Like, just keep going and going and going and going. I've done that where I've sat for 30 minutes writing out all those things. But then we want to do the other side of it, which is the non-ideals, and allow yourself, in your list there, it's going to be just as long and possibly even longer, of all of the non-ideals. I've never been able to do it before. Customers are hard to find. My business always fails. All the negative things that we try to shove down and ignore, put them out on that piece of paper and look at them and really start to pay attention to them, and literally say, I don't choose you. I don't choose you. I don't choose you. Or one of my favorite things to do is to look at it, to write out your goal. This is my goal. And then look at the things that are all those non-ideals, and say to yourself, I choose this non-ideal over my goal. And if that resonates and that's okay, great, choose it. But if you look at it and say, I don't choose that. I don't choose for it to be hard for customers to come to me. I don't choose to, live in debt. I don't choose to struggle anymore, right? It doesn't make sense just doing that piece. And there's a lot of other things that I do with people as I take them through a whole lot of different processes, but that's an important process. Just that recognizing it and looking it in the eye and owning it already starts to make that shift, because we're paying attention to it and saying, no, this doesn't work for me. I don't choose you. I choose this on the ideal side.
I love that. So much of being an entrepreneur, and especially if you want to be successful, is in the choices that you make, choosing to show up, choosing to essentially elect yourself to solve the problem that you have in your life, right? And so I love that as part of facing your fears. Let's talk about, how you've grown your business, because it sounded like people just saw what you were doing and started asking you about it. Was that really all it took? And how were you putting yourself out there? Were you using social media, or tell me about how you started getting clients and growing that business?
So in the beginning, that was part of how it started. But in the beginning, when I started doing it, I didn't have the goal of building a big business. I was just, people they just started coming to me, and I was like, well, I guess I can help that, right? It was one of those things that sort of fell into my lap. But then once I decided and said, I want to do this. I love doing this. I want to build this. Then I had to actively go out and build it. And I definitely have referrals, but I have to ask people. I have to ask my clients, hey, you're successful. Who do you know that would also like this same success? Please refer them. So I had to get really good at asking for referrals. And I use social media a lot. So when I started this, it was 2016. So people weren't using social media the same way they are now to advertise businesses. So I was one of the few. So I could put some posts up and talk about what I was doing, and people would flock to me and say, hey, how are you losing this weight? Totally different world now. Because everybody everybody is doing stuff like that, but you can still do it. I still build very strongly through social media, and making connections with people, going to networking events. Really, for me, it is talking to as many people as I can possibly talk to, and connecting, because I do very well connecting people. I'm an empath. I can understand where people are coming from, and I can relate to people. And I'm also not shy to say, what you're struggling with, I'm not the right one for you right now, but I have someone that I can refer you to. And so people trust that I'm not, that I really will want the best for everybody. And if what they need is not what I can offer, then I will pass, then I will say, you need to work with this person or this type of person. But marketing has shifted over the years. With my coaching right now, I don't have an affiliate program. I will probably build one. It's something that I'm definitely looking at. I'm also looking at training, and I am training other people to do what I do, so that whether it becomes an affiliate program or whether I have a team underneath me that has learned to do what I do, that I can pass clients down to them. And it could be a combination of both things. And I'm still sort of mapping out where this is going. This is all sort of morphed over the last year and a half, really sort of how my business works. And it's fun. Like that's the one thing that I would tell people. If you're going to build a business, it has to be fun for you, whatever you're doing. Not every day, not everything is fun, but the majority of the time, it has to light you up, and it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, you're not going to go out and do the work. You're going to find reasons to do everything else instead of doing the work. So for me, I love connecting with people. I love coaching people and watching the shift happen really fast, and seeing, getting the phone calls or the emails or the text messages saying, oh my gosh, after our session, this, this and this, or before the session, this and this. And now afterwards, all these things have happened, and it's been 24 hours. Holy cow, right? Like that lights me up, because I know that I'm showing up in the world in the way that I want to show up, and I can help people, learn how to show up so that they can light up the world and they can make a change. So when you're building a business, and it was the same thing with the chocolate business, I loved it. I loved seeing people light up when they got their chocolates, and how fun it was and how different it was. And so it's got to be fun. Not that there's not some mundane in it, but overall you have to enjoy it, or you're not going to be successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you come from this place of really caring about the customer and the end result that they're getting. You're worried about doing what's best for them. And a lot of people, and I think maybe that's where this negative stigma comes from with business and sales, right? Because so many people are out there just trying to get your dollar from you, right? And they don't have that mindset of actually doing what's best for you, of being willing to say no to a customer because it's not in their best interest. So I love that. And that's solid advice for anyone listening out there, to put your customer first, really. But on the same hand, I can understand where some of those people come from that are worried about their income or where their next dollar comes from. So like, how do you balance that? Because obviously there's a need to get clients and need to make money. So, or has that ever been an issue for you?
Oh, it's definitely been an issue. Absolutely. It's been an issue. But when I feel that, and we all feel it, that's scarcity mindset. I know that
Yeah.
when I treat people well and when I work with them where they're at, then I'm going to be much more successful and they're going to be much more successful. I don't want to ever talk someone into working with me or that now is the time, because they're going to start and it's not going to work well. If they're not for what I do, if they're not in it, they're not going to do the work. And then they're going to turn around and say, well, what you do doesn't work. Well, I know what I do works, but only if you want it to work, only if you're willing to take those action steps. I actually have somebody right now who came to me. She wanted a 6-month coaching engagement. We had gone through all the preliminary stuff and she's having some health issues and we were just getting ready to start. And she came back and she said, I have to do this first. And I said, please do that first, because I want her to be fully in with what we're doing. And she came back, this was a couple weeks ago. She came back to me yesterday. She finally has all of her diagnoses and all the different things. And she said, here's what the doctors have said. Here's the thing. She said, do you think I should start with you now or should I wait a few more weeks? And I said, where are you going to be most successful? I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to support you in however I can support you. And so don't feel like you have to jump in now if you are not really ready. If you still need to focus on the physical things that are going on in your body, focus on those. But if you say, okay, I can, now that I have a diagnosis and we can handle this and there's a plan of action, I'm ready to jump in, then let's go. And so knowing that, she came back, she was so appreciative of that. And she's still deciding. She hasn't decided, but it doesn't matter to me. Whether she comes on now, whether she comes on in 6 weeks, whether she comes on in 6 months, when she comes on, she's going to come on fully and be ready to do the pieces of the things that I can help her with. And we've got some very clear goals that we set to help her. I am helping her grow her business, shift the stuff that's been in the way from her growing her business. So we've got some really clear goals, but if she's not ready to actually grow her business yet, because she's dealing with her physical stuff, then it's silly for her to come in and start working with me, because she's not going to do the actions and then she's not going to be happy with it and she's just wasted her money. So scarcity mindset is a really big issue for people when we own businesses. Oh my gosh, where's my next paycheck going to come from? How am I going to put food on the table? We've been through that. I have lived through that. And living through that really taught me that every time I feel that, the transformation is in the trigger. So when I feel triggered in that, that means I'm doing something wrong and I need to step back and find the people that I can connect with. And whenever I do that, clients start coming and people start reaching out, out of the woodwork, crazy things happen. But when I get into that scarcity mindset, that's an energy. So when you have that energy about you of being afraid and being so desperate to bring on clients or customers or whatever else, people feel that and your guard is up, which puts their guard up and they don't want to work with you. When you just say, I have the best whatever, I know my product or my services can really help you, and you just feel that and fully feel that and say, for those who need it, I'm here for you. And those who don't, that's okay. When you really can embrace this, and this is one of the things that energetically I help people embrace, that's when things change. That's when people start flocking to you, because that's what they want. They want to feel really comfortable with you. And if your thing isn't for them, okay, there's somebody else out there that it is for, and you'll find them.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me that they'll feel the energy that you have kind of about the business.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, this is solid advice for anyone listening. This is a great way to build goodwill, to build trust with your clients, which is exactly what, makes them want to work with you. So I love it. I love it. What are, I guess, because it sounds like things just kind of organically, kept going, but what have been some of the challenges of growing this business? Aside from, mindset and, some of the other stuff we've already talked about, what do you think?
So marketing has been a big thing. I mean, I depended early on very much on social media. And like I said, in the beginning, that worked great. And then all of a sudden, when everybody else started jumping on the social media marketing bandwagon and a lot of people doing similar kinds of things, it didn't work so great. And fortunately, I got a lot of referrals, so that kept my business going. But that's been my biggest challenge, is how do I meet new people? How do I get new contacts? How do I reach to a new audience? And I think that's the number one thing I hear when I work with people who are trying to build their businesses is, where do I find new people? So it's stepping that up and recognizing, okay, what worked before may not always work. And we have to be open to that and recognize, okay, it's go into the SHIFT, right? Seek change. Okay, this isn't working. I need to find change. I need to have a plan. Okay, just because you have a plan, your plan is going to work for so long. Everybody's is, and we are going to have to change that plan at some point. Yeah, the the how does not always have to stay the same. My how, when I first started, was weight loss and wellness coaching. And I knew how to do that. I was very successful at doing that. I grew a big business very quickly. I was making six figures doing that within the first year, and, it took off very fast. And that was my how for quite a while. And honestly, I was really afraid of changing that how when people came to me and said, we want this other piece of it. And I held back and pulled back for a while because I knew that how. I knew exactly how to do that. I had a system. I knew how to market it. I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to plunk them into my program. And then I had to wrap my head around, okay, that was a great how, and it's still a great how. I still have a lot of weight loss and wellness clients, but my how doesn't have to just stay that. My how has changed multiple times, and I've added new things, and I've talked to different people. So when you're making a business plan, you have it, and that can start as your how, but recognize when this isn't working the way I want it to work again, we need to step back and reevaluate what is a better plan of action. So maybe it's changing your marketing. Maybe it's reaching to people differently. Maybe it's adding something new to your business or taking something away from your business. Sometimes people get into this, well, I need to add and add and add and add and add. Well, no, not necessarily. Sometimes you've added too much and you're overwhelming people. So it's different things for different people, but it's really paying attention to that S, that H, that I, right? Seeking change. It's not working for me. Have a plan. Now I'm going to take some action steps. Are these action steps working? Are they helping me? Yes, great. Now what's that F again, right? What am I facing that goes along with this new plan that I need to look in the eye and clear out so that I can have that next level of transformation?
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have this kind of circular process to keep reevaluating. It reminds me a lot of the scientific method, and I think it's a great way to continue to solve problems in your business. And I especially love just this idea that you have to continue to adapt, because otherwise things stagnate, and or competition comes up and takes your business, right? So you have to find ways to stay relevant, to stay innovative, and I love that. So great reminders.
Look at any successful business. Look at Amazon. It started with books, right? And now they sell everything. They had to adapt. They had to grow. They had to change their plan. Apple, same thing. All these big companies, that how is changing. Their main mission is the same. My main mission, when I started as a weight loss and wellness coach, my main mission was to help people get healthy and to help them change their lives. So that is still my main mission. How I do it, I've expanded some of the things that I do. I've expanded the tools that I have to offer. I've expanded who I can reach and how I can help them do it. It's not just about the weight loss piece anymore. That, though, like I said before, that's still a component, but it's a bigger picture. That's going to morph and change over time. Change is going to happen. Change is inevitable. But are you going to take charge of it and control that change, or are you going to let it just happen on its own? Because if you just let it happen on its own, your business probably isn't going to be very successful, because the world around you is going to keep going. And if you're not shifting with that and changing with that and saying, is this still what I want to be doing and following my mission, then you're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of want to go back to something you said about the chocolate business. You said you had a partner that kind of took on the finances and stuff. A lot of people, you hear mixed results when it comes to partnerships. So what do you recommend with that? I mean, clearly it worked for you, but a lot of people have horror stories. So I think what separates, the partnership you had from all those others that didn't work?
So first of all, I think you have to vet your partner well. You have to, and have legal agreements written out as to what's going to happen. That was one thing that we didn't have because, like I said, I walked away so fast. That was not my plan. Man plans, God laughs. Right. So there were certain things, and I definitely took a hit financially because we didn't have it laid out that when I walked away, what was going to happen. And we just then, at that point, I just threw up my hands. I had, a sick kid and a brand new baby. And I was like, whatever, I'll deal with it. So, vet your partner well. really, and have plans and action of if you're going to dissolve this. Nobody wants to think about dissolving a partnership when you create one, because you're going to think, oh, this is perfect, right? Nothing could go wrong, but it can go wrong. So have that plan of action as to where you're going to go. And with that business partner, have regular, meetings, that are scheduled times, once a week, every other week, whatever it is, to sit down and look at your business and dive in and say, what's going well, what's not going well. Don't just, like I said, I was the innovative. That's my specialty. That's what I love to do. And she was the very, type A, kept me in line, and can we afford to do this? And this is what it's going to cost us. And here's the income, right? And so, first of all, having someone who has opposite strengths from you for me was really important, because if I had brought on a second innovative person, we would have been a mess, right? I knew that I needed someone who could do the books and keep the books, and that could be her role. So have someone whose strengths balance out your strengths. And looking at that, and have very defined roles of, okay, this is what I'm going to be in charge of. This is what you're going to be in charge of. And then we come together on a regular basis to look and say, okay, is this working? She could pull me in and say, Lesley, this idea over here is a great idea, but here are our finances, and this isn't going to make sense. We can't afford to go do this trade show because whatever it is, or if we want to be able to afford to go do this trade show, we need to go sell X more chocolate beforehand so that we can cover those expenses, right? Those kinds of things. So having that person that's a balance to you is really important, really, really important, and having open communication. So one of the things that I actually do in my mindset coaching part of my business is I have an assessment that people can take. That's the Habit Finder assessment that measures your habits of thinking. So everybody, habits of thinking can sabotage or can support what you're doing. So habits of thinking, though, are like any other habit. They can be changed if they're not working for you. And this assessment is not a personality test. It's actually an unpersonality test, but it shows where your mind goes when you're stressed, when things are going on. So one of the things that I love to do, and I work with teams and I work with partnerships on this, where the people in the team or the people in the partnership will take this assessment, and we can look at and say, and I wish I had this when I brought on a business partner, because it's an amazing tool, because you can look at it and you can say, this is where your mind goes at this, and this is where your mind goes, and these are the things that happen. So for me, I know that my tendency is to be a very vivid visual. I have the skill of being a very vivid visualizer, but a lot of times, naturally, it goes to the idea of fantasy, and you create this fantasy world, and then it leads to, a bit of overwhelm, and it leads to this, and it leads to this, and you can go through and see where it goes. And so when you have that, and you can understand, okay, the person that I'm working with, this is how they think, and here's how I think, you can then speak to each other differently. So when I'm working with a client who's taken this, and I know that all these things are going on, and it is literally zapping the joy from their journey, and it's knocking down their self-esteem, and their need to be right on a scale of 1 to 10 is, off the charts at a 52, right? I know when somebody's like that, I'm going to ask them very different questions and connect with them differently than somebody who is finding a ton of joy in this journey, and their self-esteem is amazing, and they don't have to fight and battle to always prove that they're right. I'm going to talk to those people very differently. And so that's one of the things that I love when I'm working with people in businesses and executives who either run teams or people who have partnerships. We can look at that, and that changes that whole relationship. When you understand how the person you're working with thinks. In marriages, this is amazing. I mean, my husband took this, and I can look at it and I can say, okay, I know this is how he thinks, so I'm going to talk to him differently. Instead of saying things that is going to, knock his self-esteem or, challenge his need to be right or whatever it is, I can ask the same thing in a different way that's going to support that instead of stick the knife in. Or sometimes, depending on the relationship, you might want to stick the knife in, but you can do that, and you can know how that person is working and thinking. And if the ways that you're working and thinking aren't serving you, you can then notice it. Oh, I know that my brain, my habit of thinking tends to go to this world of fantasy and catastrophe. So when I catch myself going there, I can say, no, I don't choose that. I choose to be more balanced. I choose to be more intentional in my thinking. I choose to use my skill of vivid visualization to serve me, not to take me off of off of into this obsessive thinking, which is and spinning around and around and around and creating all these new things, but not really accomplishing anything, which many entrepreneurs have that. That's 98% of the entrepreneurs have both the fantasy and catastrophe thought processes and the obsessive thinking processes where we just go around and around and around trying to come up with new and better ways to do things, but we don't actually ever do it, or we do it very slowly. That's very normal, but it doesn't have to be. And that's the power. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I've never heard of a test like that analyzes the way you think.
Yep.
I've heard of, personality tests, obviously, and people using them to help, themselves understand the type of person they want to bring on for their team to balance their strengths and weaknesses, all that. But this is different. This analyzes essentially your clients and helps you better serve them, which I think is fascinating. And I think it's a cool way to improve your service in a sense. So
anyone can take this. If they go to understandyourhabits.com, they can take the assessment. It's free. And they can sign up for a free debrief with me. So the gold is in the debrief. So you'll get the assessment and you won't have really much clue as to what it really means until we go through it. Because you could have certain things that show quote unquote out of balance, but you're actually really good at using them. So even though it shows out of balance, you might use it in a way that's not sabotaging you, that's serving you. So that's where the benefit of that debrief is to really understand it and to be able to recognize, oh, this is where my brain goes. Am I using this to my advantage? Or is this what's holding me back on this side of the Grand Canyon, keeping me stuck here? And if I shift this thought process a little bit, then I can start to move forward more towards my goals.
I love that. Where can people go to connect with you and work with you aside from that link? And obviously we'll have all these links in the show notes and stuff. So if you're listening, go there. But yeah, what would you say to people?
So you can find me on Facebook, Lesley Zwick, on Facebook. And I'm on Instagram and TikTok as well, but Facebook is really where I spend most of my social media time. You can email me at info@lesliezwick.com. And you can if you go to that understandyourhabits.com, you can take the habit finder assessment. You can also go to resetrebuildrestore.com/opportunities and see some of the things. If you're like, I want to jump in, I want to sign up for our coaching sessions or what, you want that. You can go straight there and check out some of the opportunities and ways to start working right away.
That's perfect. What's your final message to our audience, all those entrepreneurs out there?
Build your dreams. You can do it. Like really, don't stop dreaming. No dream is too big. But face the things when you start thinking of those dreams. Look at the things instead of just living in this fantasy land. Start looking at the things that are standing in your way and make a choice. Do I want to give those power, or do I want this dream? And then put that into act. Start taking action steps, teeny tiny baby action steps. One of my favorite books is the book of The Gap and the Gain. And this is exactly what he teaches. We have a goal. And so often we continue to look at how big the gap is from where we are to where we're going to get to, but we forget to turn around and look and see how far we've already come. And those baby steps are exactly how far we've already come. So pay attention to that. Celebrate all of those wins and use those to propel yourself forward, to take just one more small action step, and you can build it.
That's perfect. Is that Dan Sullivan, that book?
Yep, Dan Sullivan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got great stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show, Lesley. This has been amazing. For anyone listening out there, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Please, on whatever platform you're on, subscribe so that you don't miss the next episode. And please share this. It helps us out a lot. Thank you so much again, Lesley, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks for having me.